Today, we are announcing the arrest of 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht for igniting a fire that ultimately burned down the Palisades. Earlier this year,
a man is now behind bars, accused of setting that massive fire in the Pacific Palisades that killed people and damaged thousands of homes and buildings. And the details are strange and include a music video about setting fires, 911 calls, ChatGPT, and an offer to fight the fire. I go through the creepy details that we know about Jonathan Rinderknecht and the investigation.
We have evidence of that will be addressed in trial, but evil people do evil things.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. It's been more than 9 months since a fire started in the Pacific Palisades that would end up killing 12 people and destroying 6,800 homes. The images from that fire were unbelievable. Thousands of other buildings were torched. Firefighters battled the fire for days. That area of Los Angeles literally looked like hell on earth when it was all said and done. And that may have been the goal of the person who set the fire. The search for the person who started the fire, or possibly people who started it, started back in January. But then there were other people who wondered, was this caused by fireworks? Was it an accident on New Year's Eve? Or even power lines brought down by winds? Did that spark the fire? The ATF and the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California say, nope, neither of those things started this fire. They say this man, 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht, set the fire just after midnight on January 1st with a lighter. The U.S. Attorney says that Rinderknecht was an Uber driver on New Year's Eve and was in the area where the Lockman fire started. That was the first fire. Here's the acting U.S. Attorney, Bill Asaley.
The allegations in the affidavit are supported by digital evidence, including the defendant's ChatGPT prompt of a dystopian painting showing in part a burning forest and a crowd fleeing from it. Late last New Year's Eve, Rinderknecht returned to Pacific Palisades after working the evening shift as an Uber driver. Two of his passengers told law enforcement that he appeared agitated and angry that night. After dropping off a passenger in Pacific Palisades, Rinderknecht parked his car and tried and failed to contact a former friend. He exited the car, walked up a nearby trail, took iPhone videos at a nearby hilltop, and listened to a rap song whose music video including objects being lit on fire.
Now, the complaint charging Rinderknecht is chock full of details about him and the investigation, so let's dig into it a little bit more, including this music video. At approximately 11:28 p.m., Rinderknecht used his iPhone to access YouTube to listen to the song entitled Angenette by the French artist Jasmine. I have reviewed an English translation of the French lyrics for the song, and a theme of the song is despair and bitterness. During his interview on January 24th, 2025, Rinderknecht admitted he was fluent in French. He grew up in France. Google records indicate that Rinderknecht had listened to the same song 9 times in the previous 4 days. The music video for the song shows the main character, Jasmine, lighting things on fire. Google records indicate that Rinderknecht had watched the music video 3 times in the previous 4 days. So let's take a look at that music video. In the official music video on YouTube, the artist Jasmine, he does set things on fire. You can see he's burning money at one point. There's another scene of what appears to be some type of trash can burning and some other paper burning. And this is that dystopian image that the acting U.S. attorney referenced. He says Rinderknecht crafted it on ChatGPT, showing a fire and people fleeing. The image was created, they say, on July 11th, 2024, more than 5 months before the fire started. The prompt for that photo by Rinderknecht, according to the complaint, states, a dystopian painting divided into distinct parts that blend together seamlessly. On the far left, there is a burning forest. Next to it, a crowd of people is running away from the fire, leading to the middle. In the middle, hundreds of thousands of people in poverty are trying to get past a gigantic gate with a big dollar sign on it. On the other side of the gate and the entire wall is a conglomerate of the richest people. They are chilling, watching the world burn down and watching the people struggle. They are laughing, enjoying themselves, and dancing. The scene is detailed and impactful, highlighting the stark contrast and the direct connection between the different parts of the world. Here's another look at that photo. The area where the U.S. Attorney says the fire was initially set was in a clearing that people call the Hidden Buddha, because there's an old utility pole there and people leave Buddha trinkets there. That is where, after midnight, the U.S. Attorney says Rinderknecht set the fire and watched it burn for a very short time and then tried to call 911.
It took the defendant several tries to contact 911 to report the fire. He fled the scene in his car, but turned around after passing fire engines driving in the opposite direction to fight the fire. While the Lockman fire burned, the defendant walked up the same trail from earlier that night to watch the fire and firefighters, using his iPhone to take short videos of the scene.
So let's go back to the complaint, where there is more detail about what the feds are alleging. They write, at approximately 11:47 p.m., Rinderknecht used his iPhone to take 2 videos in or near the Hidden Buddha clearing. In the videos, Rinderknecht panned around almost 360 degrees, capturing the view from the top of the hill. No fire or fireworks were visible. At approximately 11:54 p.m., Rinderknecht used his iPhone to again listen to the song entitled Unzude Anze by the French artist. That's the music video I showed you where Jasmine, the singer, sets things on fire. The complaint states, the first indication of the Lockman fire was captured at 12:01 a.m. on January 1st, 2025 from a camera approximately 4.7 miles away. Footage taken from that same camera 35 seconds earlier did not show a fire. A closer camera, approximately 0.2 of a mile away from the Hidden Buddha clearing, first captured the glow of the fire at 12:21 a.m. The complaint continues. Rinderknecht attempted to call 911 at approximately 12:31 a.m. The call did not go through, most likely because he was out of cell phone range. The GPS data obtained from Rinderknecht's iPhone carrier for that attempted call placed his iPhone slightly below the Hidden Buddha clearing. The complaint says that Rinderknecht called 911 more than 5 times, but those calls were not successful. Interestingly enough, investigators say the University of California, San Diego has cameras set up all over to detect wildfires. ATF agents say that this fire spread very quickly. This image from 12:13 a.m. shows the fire. You can see that bright ball in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. They say that is the fire. The complaint says Rinderknecht finally connected to 911 at 12:17 a.m. By that time, the fire had been burning for at least 5 minutes. On the call, Rinderknecht reported the fire. By that point, a local resident already had reported the fire to 911. During the call, Rinderknecht typed a question into the ChatGPT app on his iPhone asking, "Are you at fault if a fire is lit?" That was a typo. He meant lit because of your cigarettes. ChatGPT's response was, "Yes," followed by an explanation. So Rinderknecht, according to the ATF, drove away from the Palisades and surveillance cameras actually recorded his vehicle, but then something changed. The complaint states, on his way down Palisades Drive westbound, he passed fire engines driving up Palisades Drive eastbound, responding to the fire. Rinderknecht turned around and followed the fire engines to the scene. Rinderknecht was driving at what appeared to be a high rate of speed. When Rinderknecht arrived back at the base of the hill, firefighters were beginning to respond to the Lockman fire. Rinderknecht later told investigators that he offered to help the firefighters fight the fire. Based on my training and experience, that would be highly unusual conduct. Now, let me tell you, that is definitely weird. The best thing anyone can do in a situation like this is to get out of the way and let the professionals handle the firefighting. Rinderknecht is innocent until proven guilty, but experts will tell you that sometimes a suspect will insert himself or herself into an investigation. Now, after that, the complaint states Rinderknecht then walked back up that same trail that he had used to climb up and down the hill earlier that night in order to watch the fire and the firefighters. At approximately 1:02 a.m., Rinderknecht used his iPhone to take 4 short videos of the fire and firefighters from the same trail. The efforts to put out this fire, dubbed the Lockman fire, were intense. firefighters fought the flames from the ground and water was dropped from the air to try to stop the flames. They spent New Year's Day fighting the fire and ultimately believed they had put it out. They left the fire hoses there just in case the fire rekindled and then collected those hoses the next day on January 2nd. Now, they believed, according to the ATF, that the fire had been extinguished. Now, this is a photo taken from a drone after the Lockman fire. It was included in the complaint charging Jonathan Rinderknecht with maliciously starting the fire. The photo shows the damage before the Palisades fire started. This image shows the perimeter of the fire, including where the Lockman fire started, known as the point of origin. The red lines show the perimeter where the firefighters believed they had contained the fire. But down at the bottom, you see another point, and that is the point of origin for the Palisades fire, which was first reported on January 7th in the morning, sometime around 10:30 a.m. The ATF says the Lockman fire may have been put out above ground, but it was burning underground, smoldering for 6 days. It practically sounds like what you would think of as hell in a movie.
The fire continued to smolder and burn underground within the root structure of the dense vegetation. So that fire started on January 1st, and it smoldered underground for about a week until on January 7th, heavy winds caused this underground fire to surface and spread above ground, causing what became known as the Palisades Fire, one of the most destructive wildfires in Los Angeles City history. Law enforcement got to work and by January 24th had identified and interviewed the defendant. During his interview, he lied about where he was when he first saw the Lockman fire, claiming he was near the bottom of a hiking trail. Geolocation data for the 911 call showed that he was standing above the fire in a clearing merely 30 feet from the blaze as it rapidly grew. As the world watched in horror as the Palisades fire burned, victims perished in the smoke and flames. Homes where cherished family memories and belongings were turned to rubble and ash. The iconic Pacific Coast Highway along Malibu looked like a war zone. Thousands of people were forced to evacuate. Though homes and businesses cannot be rebuilt, this arrest, we hope, will provide a measure of justice to all those who were impacted.
The damage was unbelievable. As I mentioned earlier, people fled their homes. 6,800 homes were damaged. 1,000 buildings were also damaged. And most importantly, 12 people were killed. They lost their lives. The ATF says Jonathan Rinderknecht set that fire on January 1st that eventually led to the Palisades fire.
Through this extraordinary team effort, investigators determined that the Palisades fire, reported on January 7th, was caused by an intentionally set fire near a viewpoint along the Temescal Ridge Trail into Pegna State Park on January 1st. The fire was a holdover fire, meaning it was deeply seated in dense vegetation and roots and continued to burn undetected until catastrophic weather ensued, resulting in the Palisades fire. Rinderknecht is now charged with setting the January 1 fire. We know this arrest cannot erase the pain or grief or losses endured, but we hope it is a step forward.
The complaint outlines how the ATF believes Rinderknecht started the fire. It states, video footage from Rinderknecht's iPhone, time-stamped on the afternoon of December 31st, 2024, showed what appears to be a green barbecue-style lighter inside Rinderknecht's apartment. Investigators found what appears to be the same lighter in the glove compartment of Rinderknecht's car when they searched it on January 24th, 2025. Subsequent laboratory testing confirmed that a sample of DNA found on the lighter from Rinderknecht's glove compartment matched a sample of Rinderknecht's DNA. Video footage from Rinderknecht's iPhone on January 1st, 2025 at approximately 1:44 a.m. showed that Rinderknecht's glove compartment was open while he was driving. During his January 24th interview, Rinderknecht admitted that he brought a lighter with him when he walked up to the hidden Buddha clearing, but he claimed that he could not remember what kind of lighter that he brought. Now, there have been many, many complaints about a lack of resources contributing to the spread of the Palisades fire and it raging for days and days on end. But this charge that Jonathan Rinderknecht faces is ultimately about what sparked the Lockman fire on January 1st. Here's another look at that ChatGPT artwork the feds say that Rinderknecht created of the city on fire and the people fleeing. This was in July of 2024. Now, at some point, Jonathan Rinderknecht moved to Florida. He's in custody in Orlando, but will be extradited to California to face this charge, and additional charges could be added at grand jury. The head of the ATF talked about how they could be so certain of how and when the fire started.
So I know there's been speculation of other ignition sources. And I just want to assure everyone, ATF did not identify this suspect and focus specifically on this suspect. We still utilize our scientific process. And part of the lengthy time that it took to go over these thousands of acres that were burned is we literally had agents with our partners on their hands and knees crawling through fire debris. They're observing fire behavior patterns. They're flagging patterns. An example of that, fire will cause natural debris to twist and freeze in a position pointing to the origin. So looking at all those fire patterns, flagging those, ATF was able to specifically get into the origin of where that fire started from. Once they dialed into the origin, using all the investigative techniques that they have, then they start really dialing into that very specific spot that fire was created. An example of a fire research lab, they collected buckets and buckets of debris, flammable materials, natural and otherwise, found within that area, sent it off to a fire research lab. And that's where 500 tests were conducted at that lab. That review process is then looked at by a panel of our experts in a peer review process to see if the science matches up with the theory and the actual evidence that was collected. I know it was also broadcast, we broadcasted it as a public safety announcement. Back in spring, we went up and recreated a fire very safely with our partners with LA Fire, using butane and scientific process to create the fire behavior to see, and I'll tell you, to the extent of the scientific expertise that we went through, we recreated it in the exact lunar time that the fire started, meaning the exact size the moon was, and as close to the starlit environment that fire started. So we could recreate scientifically a fire and see how fixed surveillance points saw that fire as it developed from other evidence that we collected, both from witnesses' phones, fixed surveillance points, and other data. We were able to see how that fire behaved, how it grew, the size of that behavior and that fire, and the size that it would be for witnesses to see it reported. We went through exhaustive efforts to look at potential ignition sources, whether they were fireworks, whether they were down power lines, or any other source of ignition. They went down those investigative paths with exhaustive length to either rule them in or rule them out. With clarity, we know this is an incendiary fire and that the subject that we arrested started it.
Would you say that this subject was obsessed with fire, and what do those images prior?
Once again, that speaks to motive. That's not an element that we need to meet. That will be addressed in the trial. And we do have evidence of that for trial.
What was the rap song?
I'm not going to go into those specifics.
Okay.
I'll just highlight, we're not making a probable cause arrest. This team up here feels that we have met beyond a reasonable doubt. We are confident that the burden of proof by the government on this presumed innocent person will be met in trial.
Based on the AI images that you did show, was it his intent to cause as much destruction to a town? You show the AI images for a reason, so it definitely leads to that impression, and I would just like that on the record.
I wish we could get into somebody's head, but we can't.
The complaint states that investigators determined that the ignition area for the Lockman fire was an area located approximately 30 feet south of the hidden Buddha feature. The overall area for the ignition area was approximately 20 feet by 20 feet. The area does not include any hiking trails, but was accessible via a small depression/gully running downhill from the hidden Buddha clearing. The ATF, they say this investigation is ongoing, and if convicted of this one charge, Jonathan Rinderknecht could face a minimum of 5 years behind bars in federal prison or a maximum sentence of 20 years behind bars. We'll keep an eye on it for you. And that's it for this edition of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.